And it does mirror traditional media because there could only be so many good ideas, right? So sometimes we copy other good ideas. We just do it a little different, a little better.
If the trust is cracked, where do we stand? Who keeps score when the facts land? This is media in the margins. Media in the margins.
All right, this is my transparency statement. This podcast approaches journalism as a public, evolving process rather than a finished product. We treat knowledge making as something that's developed through dialogue, not delivered as final authority. While we retain editorial control, our goal is to make parts of that process visible in its uncertainties, its limits, and its revisions over time. So corrections and updates will be documented in the show notes. For context, I'm currently affiliated with Oslo Met University in the Department of Photojournalism, and this conversation is being recorded on April 11th, 2026. And I guess for full transparency, I should admit that I was a student in your news creator field guide course.
Yes.
So I should probably say that. I really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday to join me for this conversation.
Yeah, of course. That class was so much fun to put together. And the group that we had, I thought was just really wonderful and so thoughtful. I really enjoyed that.
I did too. And today we're going to focus on what journalism looks like when it's built directly for platforms like TikTok or Instagram, where audiences, their format, trust, and distribution are fundamentally different from traditional media. And our special guest is V Spehar. Did I say that
Yep,
right?
you got it right. Yes.
V is the creator of Under the Desk News, a social media native news platform on TikTok and Instagram with over 4.7 million followers that offers clear, contextualized explanations of current events. With a background outside traditional journalism, they have built an audience-first reporting practice focused on accessibility and trust, while also appearing across legacy outlets such as CNN, NPR, and PBS. Did I get that right? Do you want to add anything?
No, those are the main ones. Yeah.
I'm curious to start this off. Where do you get your news? Who do you trust for the news?
So this is a really great question to start with, because I think the common thing that is happening in the world right now is people are like, I don't trust the media, as if the media is one thing run by one person. And so for me, the media is many things, and it includes traditional and legacy media, or as we call it on my channel, the trad media, which is sort of a take on Tradwife, algorithms being what they are, but also first person narratives from citizen scientists, citizen journalists, expert opinion. But every day, and in the spirit of transparency, I also have a partnership with this group, but I have the partnership because I use the app. I use this app called Ground News, and I open it and it gives me essentially a good peek at what's going on across the world. And I like that better. They're a Canadian-based company because they don't prioritize just American media on their homepage, where if you are just going to the CNN homepage or just going to Washington Post homepage, you're just getting that reporting. This is an aggregator that I like. And so I tend to start with that in the morning. And I will find from there the ability to see like what's going on in the Arizona Star, what's happening in the Philadelphia Inquirer, local tiny newspapers. That's where I get a lot of my stories from, because I think that's the stuff that goes unreported, but is deeply interesting to folks. And oftentimes something that's happening in Northwest Arkansas will resonate with somebody who lives in rural Maine, or one of my listeners from somewhere else. So that's how I start my day looking for news.
And how would you define independent creator journalists?
So I think there are a couple things, and it does mirror traditional media because there could only be so many good ideas, right? So sometimes we copy other good ideas. We just do it a little different, a little better. So if you look at what a traditional media would host on their platform, they would have hard news reporters, photojournalists, opinion, they'd have columnists, they'd have comics, they'd have advice, they would have special interest stories, they have all those things. And that's what creator media is too. The problem is legacy media wants to make them all one thing. And they're like, well, if they're not V, then they're not it. Then that's not journalism, and that's influencers. And those people can't be trusted if they're not, like, for whatever reason, me or Aaron Parnas or something. So what I want to point out is there are folks who are civil rights attorneys that make content. There is like Eliza Orlins is now a journalist in the way that she is a public defender in New York and has been for 15 years. And she's an expert on law. Well, there's an awful lot of illegal stuff going on. So she's sort of working as a contributor, though she has her own channel. And so I think when we look at what is new media, what is independent media, it's what it's always been. It's just folks don't like anything new. And they don't like the idea that there are no gatekeepers anymore and that your story only goes as far as your storytelling can go. Whereas before, if you were a really great reporter, you could get hired at a big legacy agency and the banner would carry you. The banner at the masthead would be like, this is a Washington Post report, and that would do a lot of lifting for you. Now you have to do it as your own personal self. And I think there are pros and cons to that.
How much, you mentioned storytelling,
Mhm.
how much of the special sauce is storytelling? How much is facts? What are the elements that make up good independent creator journalists?
So in this version of creator journalism, it's about being able to perform the news. We are in a digital video space, and you even see all your favorite podcasts are no longer audio only. They have to be video also for folks to watch them. And it has to be short because there's such a glut of content out there. And people are so stretched to the max in their general lives that they're not going to sit down and maybe watch a whole hour on something terrible. They just don't have the space to take it in. So it's got to be kind of short. So I think people who perform the news tend to do very well. And that is no different than people who wrote blogs a couple years ago, adding in like some sarcasm or a little snark or a little funny thing that people liked. It was humanizing. It felt like a conversation. It was easy to understand. It was more pedestrian than the big time news people want to be. And the other thing is, young people have not felt included in traditional media for a long time. And the idea of having like a man in a suit with a makeup on and all the glass and all the big graphics, that appealed to a certain generation, but authority does not appeal to young people. So when they see somebody coming at them as an authority on a story, they're like, damn the man. No, I don't care. I don't want to, this must not be for me because I don't know anybody like this or that talks like that. And I think that's the benefit and sort of the path I've been able to carve out on social media is coming at news from a peer, like equal perspective, as opposed to as an authority perspective.
And do you see yourself as a journalist, a creator, or something else? How would you define it?
So in the early days, I really wanted to be like, I'm just a TikToker because it really gives you a lot of like deniability and lack of responsibility when you're like, no, I'm just a stupid TikToker. Take me seriously or don't. And then it got to a point where I was winning awards for outstanding original journalism. And I was like, okay, you can't get away with saying you're just a TikToker anymore. And that actually came from Taylor Lorenz, who is a journalist who's worked at many legacy media publications, has her own studio now. But she's covered the internet for the last 10, 15 years. And I was interviewing her for something, I think when her book first came out. And I was like, well, I'm just a TikToker. And she's like, no, you're a journalist and you need to act like it. And if you don't feel like you are, then you need to fill your knowledge gap because you are a journalist now. Like you don't get to just say, oh, I'm just a silly TikToker. Like you hold a space of authority. And I was like, really taken aback by it. And then I did take it really seriously. That's when I went to go work for the LA Times for a period. I worked for Washington Post. I started doing stuff with NBC. And in all of my contracts, I built in required mentorship because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So, they wanted me because they saw like the follow count and the engagement, but they had no idea that I really didn't know anything about like building a journalism. Like I had no degree in that. And so over the last several years, I've done a lot of work to fill that knowledge gap, and now I am decidedly a journalist.
What is that big knowledge gap? Can you talk a little bit about kind of I'm guessing the journalistic ethics, or what is that gap?
It's the ethics. It's exactly that. It's having a published set of values, a transparency statement, talking about where the money that funds you comes from, talking about who your partnerships are with and what access that you have and why you have that access. If it's not some sort of organic, if it's like through a partnership or something. And I think when I looked at, the building of journalism, I just saw, a big brick building with some windows. I didn't see like what the heart of it was until I was in it. And publishing your ethics is the first step towards becoming a real journalist. Having a mission statement, having a vision, knowing for yourself and for your audience, but really you have to have these boundaries for yourself. Where will you go? What won't you do? What's your red line? And when I used to teach entrepreneurship, I used to say this to that class, and I think it applies to journalists too. The best time to decide how you'll act in a crisis or in a bad situation is when you're in the best situation. So when you're doing your partnership agreements or when you're setting out your mission statement, you should do that before you are questioned about it. Like you should know who you are before it comes into question from other people. So I started doing that. I also started to understand things like why people get access and others don't. I also started to understand like why people, it takes so long, so goddamn long for a good story to come out. And that, and the discipline that it takes to hold all of those pieces while you are waiting for it to be right to publish. So those were some of the things that I learned in my little like crash J school I made for myself. But then
Yeah.
also like how to file a FOIA request, how to contact a member of Congress, how to vet a source, how to like look up public records and things like that. Just stuff that you wouldn't think you could do. Like I remember the first thing that I thought was crazy that we did that I was like, wow, that's real journalism, was with the Poynter Institute. And I'm a MediaWise ambassador. I just got picked for it a couple of years ago. And so they were explaining to me like how serious a responsibility is to be a MediaWise ambassador. I was like, okay. And Grace from the Poynter Institute was investigating if, in fact, as the president had said, children were getting transgender surgeries at school without their parents' knowledge, which sounds like absolute nonsense. But this is the fact checkers, so they had to fact check it. And she's like, okay, today we're going to call the board of school nurses. And we're going to ask them to go through their records and find me any record of children having transgender surgery at school. Then if there are any, were the parents alerted? Of course, there weren't any. So then she's like, okay, how about do you have any record of childhood playground incidences where the genitalia of a child was permanently altered as due to an accident? Because that would also could be considered, some kind of like affect that happened at school. And there wasn't anything like that either. Like no one's penis had been ripped off by the monkey bars, right? Like these were the things, that's how far we went. And so she was showing me like how this went down. And I thought it was just the most absurd thing the whole time until you publish it. And now it's been thoroughly vetted and researched and published. And people can't say, well, kids are having transgender surgery at school and not telling the parents, because Grace has done this incredible investigative work into a nonsense allegation to prove that it's not true. So that to me was like, this is cool. Like journalism is so much more than just like asking questions or saying what happened that day. It's about like really creative thinking.
So if we go back to, I guess it would be when you decided to go on to TikTok, perhaps not journalism. Can you take me back to the moment, the switch over moment for you and where you were before that?
Yes. So where I was before that, I worked in the culinary industry for almost my entire life. And I went to school for theater, like all little girls who want to end up in restaurants and catering. And so I had like that background. And I think that background in theater helps me with what I do now, because performing the news is such an important thing. And the way you present yourself and craft like your visuals actually like came in handy. And if I didn't have a theater degree, maybe I wouldn't know how to like build a set like I have here or whatever. It was very much a character when I started, this idea of under the desk, this very nervous news person who's like in a suit, but like, and very put together, but very panicked and talking about what the day had brought forth. And so it was meant to be entertainment. In the beginning, it was COVID times. And the reason why I got under the desk the first time was because a lot of the news anchors were at their home desks and I didn't want it to look like I was one of them. I knew I had to make it clear that it was like it was a shtick. It was like a skit in some way, even though it had facts in the skit. And so I was under the desk and I was explaining the 25th Amendment to Mike Pence. And not that he was watching my TikToks, but like to be funny during the January 6th insurrection. And that went really viral because I had information that people needed about why the National Guard wasn't there. I knew when I was watching on television from being a caterer at the Capitol that there were certain areas that people just aren't supposed to be walking in. And I was like, okay, something's definitely wrong here. And so I was just explaining to people what was going on and folks loved it. So my friend Randy was like, you better get back under that desk and tell people what's going on now. So then I just started doing Joe Biden's like first 100 days. I started doing like civics explainers. And then it just turned into a daily news recap. And I got the name Under the Desk News because a woman who watched was a potter in California, and she sent me a mug that she had made. And on one side, it said Under the Desk News, and on the other, it had my glasses. And I had never thought of a brand or anything. I remember my wife, who's a musician, she's like, "Oh, you're a brand. That's it. It's Under the Desk News. Like, that's you." And so I remember we changed like the screen name and everything to Under the Desk News. And then we were like, okay, we're Under the Desk News. And that's how that went. When I started really being like a journalist was when people asked me to, basically, when they asked me to tell them what happened that day, because that's what they would ask in the comments when I was doing the civics explainers in the daytime. It'd come around 7 p.m. and they'd be like, "B, can't you just tell me what happened today?" And I was like, "Yes. Is that what the world needs? Sure. Well, yeah, I could do that." And so that's how it came about, just as organic as that.
How much of your time is spent in dialogue with your audience?
More than is making the videos. That's the difference between new media and trad media. Trad media has audience engagement teams that measure metrics and try to buy ads and get eyeballs and stuff. The way I do it is answering my own DMs and comments. Like, that's how I do audience engagement. And a lot of it is because I get great tips there. It can be very encouraging. It lets me know when I get something right or wrong. It lets me know what people care about. Other people, I can tell who like the regular, we call them the Dust Bunnies. Well, they came up with that themselves, actually. Somebody came up with it one day. They were like, "We're the Dust Bunnies. We're under the desk with you." And I was like, there we go. There's another brand asset, the Dust Bunnies. And so the Dust Bunnies in the comments talk to each other. We did a thing one time that was so fun. I was like, I watch a lot of reality TV dating shows. Like, that's how I decompress because it's just so brain empty content. It's just such a great relief to me. And so one Valentine's Day, I was like, I wonder if I could do like matchmaking with the Dust Bunnies. And so I put up a thing and I was like, "Hey, look, if you're here, you're probably a good person who's interested in like making the world a better place. So if you're looking for a Valentine, sound off in the comments, like your name, your age, where you live, like city, and see if anybody put your picture or something." And people actually did it. And like a couple of people met up. And I was like, that's amazing. That's my audience. Now, the Washington Post isn't going to do that, and nor should they, maybe, but we are like a real group of people who has created this third space on the internet for news, for politics, for commiseration, for laughs, and even for love, it turned out.
I'm curious if you thought about, you're making this kind of, or part of this new space for journalism. Are you working together alongside legacy media, or how do you describe that or think about that?
So because I got into this when I was an older person, I'm 43. I knew that I wanted to be a pioneer to professionalizing what creator-led media was so that it would be something that got a lot of respect. And if I were 26, I would not have cared about that. I would have cared about like going to Coachella this weekend or something really fun, but I'm like, I'm not caring about that right now. So because I wanted to build respect for this industry, because I saw firsthand how TikTok can really lift people out of just lack of opportunity into endless opportunity to be heard and give voice to people that didn't have it before. I wanted that to be taken seriously and not go away. I focused a lot on spending my time on the Hill, meeting with legislators and the president even twice. And I knew that I could do that because I had the lived experience of an adult, and I would be the tip of the spear of what they knew creator media was going to be. And I wanted it to be a really good experience so that anybody who came after me had a little easier time getting in the door. And also, we had set sort of what the standards were here for when you do that work. Same thing with when I went to LA Times and the Washington Post or NBC. I wanted to show that creator media is not like silly influencer nonsense. These are genuinely serious, interesting people that could just as easily, if it's me, could just as easily, I could give you 10, 20 other people that could do it just as well. And so that's what I focused on over the last 6 years was I should have maybe focused a little more on building my own like news empire, but I just don't yearn to be the next Ted Turner or manage people. I've done that before. I did not want to like open a new restaurant, but the restaurant was a newsroom this time.
Yeah.
So I think we've made great headway in those spaces. And I think that's evident from the fact that you see more creators getting included at the table on CNN, on MS Now, in Fox News, at PBS, on NPR. There's just a lot more tolerance and acceptance, but it wasn't easy. There was a lot of like direct hate for creator-led media that came from legacy.
Yeah, there seems to be still a stigmatism
hmm
related to that. And I'm wondering how that is for you now or in the past, and how you imagine, let's say 10 years from now, what journalism will look like.
So this comes from the way that I speak in legacy media rooms. It comes from the way that I have talked about like my work as an LGBTQ activist. I am a very palatable gay person. That's what my agent told me when I was younger. They were like, "You're very palatable as a gay person." And I was like, "What?" Too mainstream. I'm very like, there's not a lot of challenge here. The mainstream's like, "Oh, you're cute and funny and non-threatening and we'll let you live," right? So in the journalism world, I continue to fight that same battle where I will hear from people, "Well, I can't stand the influencers, but not you, V. You're a good one." And I'm like, no, no, no. We're not going to tokenize people in the influencer and creator world so that you can just pick your little favorites and maintain the power structure and the gatekeeping and just let in the one or two or three people that you deem as palatable. That's just not true that influencers aren't serious, studied, and intelligent people, just like it's not true that I'm like, if you have one gay friend, then you're gay friendly. Like that's not true either. So what we struggle with is there is an establishment that still wants the gatekeepers. They still want the path to be, no, no, no. You have to do high school newspaper into college, J school, into shitty little internship, into, there are steps that we built that ladder and we want to make sure that you follow only our ladder, because if you don't, then like, what do we control and what did we do it all for? And so where I find the most resistance comes from news personalities that get paid millions of dollars to be on TV shows that get lower ratings than the influencers. And I think that must be scary. And as we see newsrooms conglomerating and journalists being laid off and people, like feeling a sense of unease in the system, they don't blame Jeff Bezos or David Ellison for why things are conglomerated and the industry is being decimated. It's easier to blame the influencers. They're more accessible for you to punch at and blame. And so I've been fighting, I would say mostly that kind of stuff, but it is getting better. And I don't think it's getting better because legacy media started finding creators that they really loved having on their show. I think it's getting better because those news personalities had to start being YouTubers, had to start trying to do creator media or digital media. And they realized how hard it is, how much discipline it takes, how alone you are, how there's no producer, there's no teleprompter, there's no researcher, there's no assistant, there's no nice office, there's no hair and makeup lady. It's all you. So once they started having to do that, I find there's a lot more respect, and we're creating this sort of middle space now where a lot more people are willing to say, because we don't necessarily want the legacy media people in the creator world either. We're like, you have $1 billion, leave us alone. Let us have our TikTok or YouTube space. Why you got to have a top show on CNN and a podcast? Like leave something for the rest of us. And similarly, they're like, yes, we want to keep our TV show. Stop threatening us. So we're creating this sort of like third space for information and sharing.
And that's a really good point. I think we can add one more thing to friction or resistance, and that possibly is budget or sustainability.
Yep.
So can we talk a little bit about that and maybe transition, because you now is different from before you were under the desk. So can you talk about sustainability and growth a little bit, and where maybe there's a future for us?
I think there will be. So if you look at when journalism started taking a hit in terms of investment and them having these big, huge budgets, right? It was not when creators started doing this in like 2020. It was much before that. And so the transition from like big budgets at these big companies and like having there be a bunch of people around and a bunch of jobs, folks had to get a little wily and they started creating nonprofit newsrooms because there was a lot of money and granting that you could go after to try and start a nonprofit newsroom if you couldn't do a big media newsroom. And then now the nonprofit money is drying up. So now the nonprofits are like, shit, we're back where we started when we didn't have the big media advertiser money anymore. So they're realizing that they have to go to subscribers. And I think it puts way too much burden on the general consumer to have to subscribe to a million things. I mean, I feel this frustration myself. I've got what? Netflix, Hulu, 17 different Substacks I subscribe to, plus my Washington Post, plus whatever. You can't even keep track of how many subscriptions you have. But that is the financial model right now. And I think the best advice I could give anybody getting into journalism is be agile. There was a time when Snapchat paid really well for content. Well, now they don't. YouTube has always been the consistent, highest paid, most consistent thing, but it's the hardest to break into. There was a time when TikTok paid really well. Now they don't. Now Facebook does. You're constantly chasing around, which is why you have to have so many verticals that you post on. It can be exhausting, but that's the truth of where the money is right now. And I think it will get better because the American public is very frustrated, feeling like they have a lack of facts, a lack of information. They're not trusted with data or deep dives anymore because the conglomerations that be just want you to buy more stuff on Amazon or watch a movie. They don't want you to be educated. So I think with the new administration, we'll see Voice of America get stronger again, maybe some of that nonprofit money come back, and maybe some folks realizing that we need investment. If Jeff Bezos wants to own the Washington Post, then he can't treat the Washington Post like Amazon, and we need to demand that he either use it responsibly or sell it to somebody who can. But it is going to always be tricky with the money, and that's any business. You're always sort of moving around with where people are investing.
Have you noticed independent creators forming cohorts? Is that another way possibly forward?
It can be. It can also hurt you, right? Because then you're tied to everything that other creator does. And people take creators much more personally than they do, hey, this is our slate of talent at CNN, and one person does something wrong. Well, they don't go to Jen Psaki or Jake Tapper and be like, well, Jake Tapper's bad because he's on the same network as this person who did a bad thing. But if you're in a cohort with somebody who does a bad thing, now all of a sudden you're associated with that bad thing. So I think it can be tricky. I think we all work in the creator world on like goodwill, friendship, and group chats more than we have any kind of like group that's going out for money together. When a group did go out for money together, this is that chorus group that a lot of folks probably heard about. It was Brian Tyler Cohen and a Democratic strategist named Stewart and a couple other lawyers who went out and got a couple $1 million from the 1630 fund to essentially put together a cohort of news and politics creators on the left to try and give them community, give them some resources, give them access to politicians, try to get them going. And it was written up as like, these are all the people that you should hate. They're all Democratic shills. They're all making money and you can't trust them. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. So I think, the people in the group loved it. And these are my genuine friends that I trust and know are good people. But to the public, they were like, no, we don't like when you all group up. That feels weird to us. So I don't know if there's a win with that just yet. I think there should be and has to be. On Under the Desk, we allow everybody to be completely independent. We, in fact, like make them stay independent. I don't have people like on my roster, even though every single day I have a new host for the podcast. And that is to maintain like Under the Desk and V Spehar are one thing, and it's just me and the desk forever and ever. It'll just be us. But on Mondays, our friend Dr. Shan from Pop Smart Media does the show. And on Tuesdays, Eric Zuliger from Under Report does the show. And on Wednesdays, it's Amanda's Mild Takes. And on Thursdays, we have a rotating guest. And on Friday, it's History in 60, right? So we have consistency, but we are not unified together. And that's the way that I've done it. I also think it allows people to run their businesses in the way that makes sense for them. The overhead to run Under the Desk News is intense. It's much less for Pop Smart Media. So for me to do a joint venture with somebody, I would have to own 80% of the venture. And that sucks. That's going to cause problems with the other person because they're going to feel like we're 50-50 talent partners. So we say 100%, 100%. And then we do a day together. And that day is what we do.
Interesting. I just want to double back to trust.
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably one of the big themes for audiences. If you're putting yourself in their shoes, how do you know who to trust?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know your audience trusts you?
So I know my audience trusts me because of the deeply vulnerable comments and DMs and emails that I get. And I read all of them and I feel that responsibility every day. And I love that accountability and relationship we have. And I genuinely cherish it. It's like number one on the mission statement to maintain trust. So that's how I know that I have it. I also trust the audience. I don't baby people with the news. I say what happened that day. And I expect if they don't understand one little part, they'll go look it up. These are curious people that we've put together. And so I think that that's my trust back to the audience is I'm going to tell you things as I know them. And I'm not going to scare you for clicks. I'm going to be transparent about why I think the story is important or what point in the story we're at, which is something Legacy doesn't always do. I'll use the Eric Swalwell situation of this week as the best example of what's going on with trust. So you have a creator, Miss Frazzled, who is a kindergarten teacher and very famous for her videos talking about like catch a bubble, and she like gentle parents politicians as a skit. She's been on here for 6 years. She's interviewed many politicians. She's a huge figure of trust. She interviewed Eric Swalwell in November, the congressman who was running for governor in California. And when she posted it, she started getting DMs and messages from women saying, don't give him your phone number, don't trust him. And she was like, okay, why? She trusted them. Why? And they're like, he's a creep. He's so gross. No, he'll be texting you in the middle of the night, like dick pics. He'll be doing this, that, the other. And she's like, why do you think he'll do that? And they were like, because he did it to me. So she's like, have you told anybody? And some of the women were like, no, because I work in Democratic politics and I don't want to deal with the backlash. And it's probably not enough to be considered assault. It's just he's gross and he bothers me and he makes me uncomfortable. She's like, no, unsolicited lewd photos is in fact enough. That's enough to be considered harassment. And you should, is there anything I could do to help you feel better to tell people? And they were like, no. And she's like, does it help you to know that there's 6 other women who texted me the same thing? And those women were like, yes, can you put us in touch? So then they were sharing stories. And when women share stories, of course, we all realize that we're having a similar experience with a horrible person. And you feel a little bit, in a group, you could be like, okay, I'm not totally alone. I should feel comfortable. And I want to make sure this doesn't happen to any other girls, because if it's happened to us 6, it's probably happened to more and we want to stop it. So since November, Miss Frazzled, who is not a journalist, she's a kindergarten teacher, has been helping these women kind of like, feel the confidence to bring forth their story. So they bring forth the story about a month ago. The rumors start speculating that they're going to, Cheyenne Hunt, who is the executive director of Gen Z for Change and a lawyer, was helping her with getting legal representation for the women. So when they come forward, they can maintain their anonymity and hopefully their careers and not suffer any greater humiliation from this situation. And through that process, it was discovered that he is alleged to have actually raped 2 of the women. It wasn't just pictures. Okay. So then Cheyenne goes to the press and they say, well, we need to verify this. And the women provided their medical records. So now we have serious verification. In the month that Fraz and Cheyenne and Suzanne Lambert and me and Keith Edwards and Elizabeth Booker Houston, who are all very trusted, if you want to call it creator-led media people, we're talking about this and saying Eric Swalwell's not the one, something's going to come out about him. Here's information about Becerra or Porter or whoever else. People were like, I can't believe V, you are spreading rumors. I had seen the evidence though. I knew who the women were also. And so I had seen it. I was like, I've seen things that you haven't seen yet. It's going to take a while for it to come out in mainstream, but I would not be talking about this if I wasn't 100% sure and vetted and had seen it. So for me and all my trust, it wasn't until CNN put out the piece last night that people were like, wow, oh my God, did you hear about this Eric Swalwell guy being a creep? And I was like, see, it's all trust independent creator-led media until you don't like what the subject of the story is. And then we need CNN or we don't trust it. And now CNN, of course, has come forth and they've told the story. So did the San Francisco Chronicle. It's got picked up by everybody now. And even the Democratic leadership, unions, different people who had endorsed him pulled their endorsements. Act Blue shut down his fundraising. It's over for him. There are still people today that are like, I'm still with Swalwell. I'm like, well, I don't know why you're with him or where you're going because he's not running anymore. What are you talking about? This is why victims don't come forward. So that's a long-winded way to tell you a story about where we're at with trust and the fact that legacy media And expert organizations and nonprofits are still the be-all, end-all, highest validator of trust in the land.
It's a work in progress for the
It
independent
is.
creators.
So what will happen next time, though, right, is people will be like, V had this a month earlier and they were right. So next time, if I get something earlier, hopefully people are like, oh, remember when we waited for Swalwell? Maybe this is like that. So,
yeah.
Yep.
When you think about your future in journalism, is there anything that you worry about?
Yeah. So your shelf life as a performer is limited, and that will be true for me also. And so I want to maximize my time while I have it to do the most and best work that I can and to ensure that I get to like Bill Nye the rest of my life, right? Like I would like to always work. I would like to be thought of as somebody that can be trusted. I would like to show up where I'm needed throughout my life, understanding that this is probably the biggest and most platform I will ever have. And I probably have like 2 to 3 years left of this level of intensity. And if I haven't built a legacy by then I don't deserve one. And so every day, that's what I think about is what does it look like for the next generation of V or Under the Desk to come up? How will I have made this a better place for them to thrive in? And how will I transition into work that doesn't require me to be so intensely engaged, but rather have a little bit more of a long burn? And like a Bill Nye, he's my possibility model. And I think about him in that way. Will it be to write books? Will it be to teach? Will it be to become a contributor on a major media channel, which I've resisted several contracts to do so far because I just don't think we're at that point yet. I would like to maintain Under the Desk forever. And so, I look at how that will be. Will I run for office? Like, is that something I want to do when I'm, past my point of whatever this is, this chapter is? So I don't know because every day I know that I'm still in like the throes of the highest demand and the most attention and the most deference I will ever have. And so I probably have 2 or 3 years left of this level of intensity, and I have to build a strong house during that time.
Speaking of time, what does your day look like? Like, what is day in the life of V?
I have a very patient wife who is also very busy. And so I think that helps. She's a touring cellist and recording artist. And so the fact that I am gone a lot, she's also gone a lot. So she has her own thing going on, which is fantastic. And we get to cheer for each other in that way. And she understands the pressures of being a public figure or like any kind of performer type person because she has her own star. But I wake up at 7 in the morning every day because I really don't sleep well at night. But 7 is when my dachshund gets up, my mini dachshund, and decides it's time for us to go downstairs and cuddle on the couch because one time she was sick and I woke her up at 7 to go downstairs and cuddle with the fleece blanket. And now for the last year, every day at 7 a.m., she's like, this is our time. This is our special cuddle time. So we start the day with dachshund cuddles, which I think is important. Then I'll watch a little bit of the news, read what happened overnight. And then we start the live show at 10. So usually by like 9, I have showered, eaten breakfast, gotten ready, done my notes. I keep notes throughout the week for what we're going to talk about on whoever's day is coming up. Pull all my clips that I need to have. We do the live show 9 to 10:30. Then I take like 2 hours to edit the live show, which luckily we're getting some help with, so I won't have to do that anymore, which is great. I have lunch with my wife. I come back. I prepare for Under the Desk news. Nighttime, do any interviews that I have to do. Go through all day. I'm going through my DMs and my emails and my comments, watching other people's content, seeing what's going on. Do the news at 6:45, post between 7 and 7:30. And then from 7:30 until 11, I monitor the comments and I am interacting with the video or with what's going on. And so I am never present and I am ever present online. And so that's why I have like 8 or 9 hours of screen time a day, which is just unhinged, but it's working time, not like scrolling time. So I like to think, well, that's a work day. That's a work day. And then I usually wake up at like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. for whatever reason, and I'll check to see if anything has happened. And sometimes that's when I get international things that have happened overnight. Like I'll be the first to report about, Israel bombing Lebanon or something because I'll be up in the night for it. And that's a day in the life. And then Saturday and Sunday, I try not to do the news, but I will respond to anything that's super urgent.
Man, that's intense.
It's a lot. And that's on a non-travel week. If it's a travel week where I have to be at like a conference or do a speaking gig or do something like that, it's all that, but from like a hotel or airport or at whatever event thing that we're at. And that is always really interesting. I'm glad that they have learned that you have to have creator spaces because they used to want us to attend the conference. And I'm like, I can't. You have to pick which one thing you want me to go to. I literally cannot just like go cruise around the conference all day. And they're like, well, how about this and lunch? I'm like, no, you have to pick one. Lunch. You want me to go talk to people at tables at lunch or watch the thing? I can't do both. And so now there's all these creator rooms at everything, which are great. And you'll just see like me and Aaron Parnas, like on the laptop, on the phone with like every other person in America trying to write the Substack letter and watch what's going on the TV. They sometimes put TV monitors so you can watch the conference from the creators room. The ADHD real comes in handy at this time because you're like listening to the monitor, different guests are coming into the room to speak to the creators. You're trying to like catch up with your buddies, write your Substack, follow the news, make a video, and eat a granola bar. I like live on kind granola bars. They should sponsor me.
They're really good. Not sponsored. Very good.
Not sponsored, very good. But that's any one of your favorite creators on the left, I'll say, because those are the ones that I know that you see out in the world. If we're all at the same event, I can promise you what it looks like behind the scenes is like nerd camp. Just everyone with their phone and their laptop and their like special interest, just nerding out. And it's really great. It's quite healing.
So, this wave of independent creators, are you guys unique? Guys in general, using the you all. Are you guys?
It's
are
guys.
You all
Are you
unique?
guys? Yeah, everybody's got their different vertical that they're great at. And one day, I was sitting in a Democracy Forward conference room, and we were doing like at one of their conferences, and I was looking at Aaron across the room and he was making a video about something. And I was like, he's got it. I don't need to make one. And that's when I started thinking of people as coworkers, even though they're not my coworkers. So like if Eliza Orleans breaks down the Diddy case, right? I'm like, I don't have to do it. I'll just repost hers. Why do I have to repeat that? Or like if Amanda Smile Takes has a really good explanation on why impeachment is the tool to use right now, not 25th Amendment, I'll just repost that. I'm like, yeah, that's great. All I need the audience to do is see the best information. I don't have to make my own proprietary little video, right? That's almost feels like littering sometimes when there's too many videos of the same type. So I just started thinking of other creators as coworkers, and it has relieved me greatly to be like, this is who you should watch about this thing. So in that way, we are our own little rainbows, but in my world, they're all my little coworkers.
Yeah. I really like that idea because I was thinking, as an educator myself, is this replicable? Can I help others, inspire others to come up without scaring them to death about?
It's just like culinary, right? Think of how many restaurants and bodegas and cafes there are in the world, and we're all making a roast chicken. But there's something about my roast chicken that makes you come to me. And then you go to Amanda's roast chicken too, though. Hers is great. You'll have roast chicken 2 times a night. It's fine, or 2 times a week. It's fine. It's the same thing with creator-led media. Even if we all are doing the same story, our take on it because of our lived experience and the way we read it is a little different. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. And I think there's so much room in creator media for new people to be coming up all the time. And we see them coming up all the time. If it was like me in the beginning, look at how many there are now. I was like the first to do news on TikTok, and now there's like thousands of people who do it, and we watch them all, and there's plenty of room.
Can we do story time? Can you tell me a story?
Hey, this is a non-commercial commercial, and the only break I'm taking in this entire podcast to make one request. If you're enjoying this content, guess what? We're not getting paid for this at all. So it would really help us if you would share, subscribe, follow, like all of those fun things that take a couple seconds, a minute of your time, means so much to us, and technically doesn't cost a thing. So with that, back to the show. Thanks for listening. Oh, I almost forgot. I also would love you to comment. Let us know what we're getting right. Let us know what we're getting wrong and what you'd like to see more of.
About I don't know, maybe a learning moment you had, or when you met someone, something surprising happened?
Yes. Let me tell you about when I met President Obama, because
Okay.
that's the best story and my favorite one to tell. So sometimes a president or a vice president will call my phone or mail me something to my home. And it's always shocking to me because I'm like, how do they know my phone number or my address? But like, they're the president. Of course they know. So one time I had visited the White House and I had met with Joe Biden. And then I got a letter from him at my house that was like about our meeting, like signed Joe Biden. Thank you for visiting. And like, here's what I remember and here's what I wish for you. And I was freaked. I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. The president sent me a letter. And so we like framed it. It was nuts. But then like a week later, President Obama's office called my cell phone. And I was like, oh my God, did like Joe give him my number? I don't know. They were like, President Obama would love to meet with you to talk about getting out the vote. Would you like to come to his office in Washington, D.C. and meet with him, make a TikTok together, just encouraging young people to vote, not partisan, nothing like that. I was like, yes, duh, obviously. So they were like, okay, send us your script of what you're going to say in the video so that he can essentially know what he wants to say in the video because we don't have a lot of time. You'll get about 8 minutes with him and you can do the video and then that'll be it. And I was like, okay, great. So I told them what I wanted to say and they were like, okay, great. He'll come in, he'll sit down, you say what you're going to say, he'll react and and then you can edit it later and then he'll leave. And I was like, okay. And so I get to his office and I'm like, well, I have to do it under his desk. And they were like, no. I'm like, no, I'm telling you my whole shtick. Cause at that time, every day I was under the desk. I was like, I have to be under his desk. And they were like, so I guess they went and asked him and he was like, all right, fine, whatever. Great. So I'm waiting under his desk for him to come in and they're like, you'll get one take. So just turn your camera on now. I was like, okay. And he won't get under the desk. He will not sit down on the ground. He's the president. I was like, of course, of course. They're like, he'll just sort of lean down and say his thing. I was like, okay. So I'm waiting. And then the door opens and I hear, hey, what are you doing under my desk in this Obama voice? And I was like, you have one take, like my theater training kicked in. And I was like, President Obama, I was just looking up who I should vote for in this upcoming election. And it's really hard to figure out who to vote for. And he's like, it is. There's so many issues to be worried about with. And he sat down, crisscross applesauce, right next to me on the floor. And just was the coolest person you've ever felt in your life. And the whole time I'm like dying, but I have to get through it in my one take. And he's like, there's gun control to worry about, affordable health care. Who's going to fill the potholes? Who's going to do this? Whatever. He's like, but it's important that you get out there and vote. Like, and don't be afraid to vote. It's like the first time you voted. You probably voted for me, right? And I was like, no, I didn't. I voted for John McCain, which was not in the script. And he just looked at me and he was like, well, it's okay. He's like, but the second time. And I'm like, I was working for Mitt Romney. I'm so sorry. And he goes, you know what? It doesn't matter. As long as you voted, that's what matters. And I was like, thanks, President Obama. And then he got up and he was like, are you fucking serious? He didn't say fucking, but I was like, listen, I was like a baby Republican, like these little, because you grow up and you vote like your parents do. I didn't think anything of it. I was like a child. And my dad loved John McCain. And so we voted for him the first time together. And then the second time I was a caterer in Tampa and I was working on Mitt Romney's RNC. So I voted for him because I thought I wouldn't get paid if I didn't vote for it, which was not true. Like, this is how dumb I was about stuff. I was like, well, I know him the best, I guess. And he says he'll do gay marriage. And so I really wanted gay marriage to pass and Obama wasn't there yet. And so we had this great conversation and it was a wonderful video and it was a fantastic time. And we've maintained a relationship with his office, but it was just like the coolest, funniest thing that ever happened and an example of how I just won't lie to you, even if you're President Obama on video.
Yeah. And I'm sure he appreciated that.
He did. My team was like, it wouldn't have been easier to be like, yes, I was like, I can't lie about it. And also it was hysterical. And then Fox News, of course, picked it up and they're like, leftist lesbian creator tells Obama she voted red. Like, it was so stupid, but he was lovely. And what I learned from that experience was like, true leadership is meeting people where they're at and trusting that they know what they're doing. Like for Obama to trust that I knew that I had to be under the desk and and for him to just sit down because that was what we were doing. He was meeting me and the audience where we were at, I think is just one of the best lessons in leadership and in authenticity and comfortableness with yourself that it wasn't about him. It was really about getting people out to vote, to the point that he's willing to sit on the floor with this silly little TikToker because he was told it would help.
And at that point, how long have you been doing Under the
It
Destinies?
had only been like a year. I was really new. I was really, really new. And the first person to take me seriously was Jen Psaki when it comes to major media. She was the press secretary at the time. And she says, she's like, I saw your videos. Like, I just thought they were really good. And she's the one who put together the original creator briefing. And in that original creator briefing at the White House for the war in Ukraine, which was treated like a real press briefing, was me, the boys from Midas Touch, who were brand new. I Am Legally Hype was there. Politics Girl, Lee McGowan was there. It was all of us in like our baby days. And look at where it turned out to be. But she was the one who really gave us validation first.
That's great. I love that. And my last question, which maybe you can guess, is I just want to know if there's anything I should have asked you, but didn't.
That's the one. See, that's the best. See, that's journalism, baby. Is there anything I should have asked that I didn't? Yes. I think that, well, I'll just add something really. Your questions were great. It's almost like you took my news creator course.
Learning from best.
You know, the thing that I want people to have is hope, because right now it's very easy to say things like, I can't do anything. It's too far gone. How can I beat the system? Or even when people behave badly in the communities we're a part of. Like, I always hate when Caitlyn Jenner comes out and she does something awful and somebody will be like, the trans community doesn't claim her. And I'm like, yes, we do. We have to. That's our bitch. Okay. She's messy and she's a disaster, but she's a part of our community. And we need to be calling her in and making sure that we're responsible for for presenting the best community that we can. So when men behave badly, or Democrats or women or whatever the case goes on, and people go, well, we're just going to shun them. I'm like, that's a deeply religious way to handle a member of your community that has failed in some way. And while there are some times when I do think people become unsafe and are no longer welcome, to start off with, we don't claim them, I think is really tricky, because that just sort of absolves the whole community of the responsibility of calling that person in. And when they're out, what are they going to do? They're probably going to double down on that bad take and be tokenized by bad people as, look, this person from that community said this, so it must be okay for me to say it. So I just want to caution people against that lack of hope, that lack of responsibility, and talk about something that Kamala Harris said to me when I moderated her book tour, and that's in her book. And that is that community is not just our friends and neighbors. It is the people that we can't fucking stand. It is people that we would never be friends with, but they live on our street. They go to our school. They work in our job, and they are a part of our community too. And how can we work from that place, as local as that, to make that community a safer, more understandable world, and then go up from there? And a way we did this on my street was not having yard signs for the election. We have a mixed neighborhood of, there's some people who are MAGA, some who are not, some who are liberal, some who have trans children who live on the street. And the way that we decided we would do it was to not put out signs, so that when my kids go out to play basketball and yours do and whatever, they don't have to feel like they can't go to that house because there's a big ugly sign on it, or it's some sort of like adult problem is facing them. They could just get off the bus and go home, and whatever happened, know that they're safe in this community. They don't need to know about all the problems and things adults are doing. And so I just encourage people to try and find those little solutions even.
Well, what happens if you're one of those people who fails or makes a mistake? Then what? What do you do?
So I think we're seeing this play out right now with people who are realizing that MAGA is over and that it was a lie. And they're like, so what do you feel when you fail? You feel shame, which is very powerful, very destructive feeling. You feel alone, you feel dumb, you feel low. And the thing that person wants to do is get as quickly as they can back to a safe feeling. That will not help them learn. So we don't have to bring them right up to the safe feeling, but we can say, I bet you're feeling really alone, and I bet you're feeling really tricked, and I bet you're feeling really dumb. You're not a dumb person. These people are professionals at psychology, and they do psyops on a CIA level. And I don't blame you for falling victim to it. And I'm proud of you for recognizing it. So many other people haven't recognized it yet. So you're ahead in that way. But the things you did while you were using, which is how I describe my dad's golf buddies, I'm like, you're like on MAGA, like an addict, like they're using. The things you did while you were using hurt people. So there has to be some accountability before there could be reconciliation, but there is a path to reconciliation. Probably going to feel a little icky for a little while longer, but best to get started sooner than later. And that tends to work for people.
I think that's how we should end, on reconciliation and hope.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good place to end.
We're going to get there. This anti-intellectualism we've been dealing with for the last 10 years is swinging towards curiosity and intellectualism and expertise. People are curious. They are sick of feeling alone. They are sick of feeling like their tax dollars only go to war. They're sick of inaction and mediocrity, and they're standing up. And you see that across this country in local elections, and you see it in the online communities that we're building, and you can be a part of that. So it's not as bad as we're told it is, and it will get better.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you, V, for coming on.
Of course.
And everyone who's listening out there. And if we touched you in some way, please consider sharing.
Yeah.
And V, till we meet again, because I'm confident we'll meet again.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm really excited to hear this episode and to see where you go on your creator media journey. Yeah, like I said, there's room for everyone. So let me know if you need anything else, or if anybody listening needs something, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.